The North Atlantic, winter 1943. Waves tower like black walls, crashing over the deck of a lone cargo ship. Ice coats the rails, turning every surface into a frozen trap. Below, the hull groans under the strained metal screaming against the sea. A sharp crack echoes through the steel plates, louder than the storm. The ship shudders violently as a fracture races along the welded seams, splitting the vessel from deck to keel. Men scramble in panic as cold water floods in, swallowing the engine room first. Thousands of tons of vital war supplies vanish into the abyss. Was speed worth it when men were still aboard? This is the story of the Liberty ship's plane, mass-produced freighters that became the lifeline of the Allied war effort. When German U-boats were sinking merchant vessels faster than they could be replaced, America turned its factories into an arsenal of the sea, churning out these ugly ducklings at a pace no one thought possible. What followed was a flood of steel that carried tanks, fuel, and food across oceans under constant threat. Sheer volume began to overwhelm the hunters beneath the waves. But in the freezing depths, something unforeseen began to happen. Cracks appearing where no torpedo had struck. Hulls failing in ways that shocked even seasoned captains. At its heart, this is about the brutal choices of total war. How far could you push speed and numbers before the sea pushed back? If this moment made you pause, take a second to mark it. Then back to the story. By 1941, the Atlantic Ocean had become a graveyard for Allied shipping. German U-boat wolfpacks prowled the routes to Britain, torpedoing merchant vessels at will. One convoy alone could lose a dozen ships in a single night. Among the crews was a young oiler from the Midwest, barely out of his teens. Standing watch in the blacked-out engine room, sleeping in his boots because the alarm klaxon never seemed to stop. For men like him, every shadow in the water could be the end. Britain stood on the edge of starvation, its imports cut by more than half. The Soviet Union, locked in mortal combat on the Eastern Front, cried out for Lend-Lease aid, tanks, aircraft, ammunition to stem the German tide. The geography was merciless. Convoys crossed the storm-lashed North Atlantic, where winter gales hurled 50-foot seas and temperatures dropped far below freezing. Arctic runs to Murmansk meant weeks of darkness, pack ice grinding against hulls, and Luftwaffe bases just over the horizon in Norway. Merchant mariner civilian crews with a handful of Navy gunners faced the worst of it aboard slow, overloaded freighters. Early Allied miscalculations left convoys poorly escorted without enough air cover. Germany, confident in its submarines, believed it could starve Britain into submission before America fully awoke. They were right about one thing. Something had to change fast. Then came the Liberty ship, adapted from a sturdy British design. These 441-foot vessels were simple, cheap, and meant for one thing: numbers. Henry Kaiser, a dam builder with no patience for tradition, brought the assembly line to the shipyards. Prefabricated sections rolled in by rail. Welders worked around the clock under floodlights. The first Keel 2 launch times fell from months to weeks, but in the rush, one hidden weakness waited in the steel flaw no one yet understood, ready to reveal itself when the cold bit deepest. Early 1942, off the American coast, U-boats run rampant in Operation Drumbeat, sinking ships within sight of beachgoers. Washington gets grim reports. Britain has weeks of oil left. The emergency program launches 18 yards, mobilize. Women and minorities pour into the workforce, many welding for the first time. Sections arrive pre-built. Massive bow and stern units lifted into place. Torches flare night and day. Build times plummet. Weather fights back, delays pile up, forcing heavier loads on each crossing. Convoys tighten formations. Escort carriers join the fight. Yet U-boats slip through the mid-Atlantic air gap. Then the record SS Robert E. Peary, assembled in 4 days and 15 hours. A propaganda triumph, lifting spirits across the home front. But it also set expectations no shipyard could safely meet. Winter 1943. Convoys push through blinding storms. Decks awash, holds crammed with Shermans and high-octane fuel. January 16th, Portland, Oregon. The new T2 tankers connected to not a Liberty ship. but built with the same rushed philosophies quietly at the fitting-out dock after trials. Calm, water, cold air. Suddenly, a bang like a cannon shot rings out, heard a mile away. The hull fractures clean across, jackknifing upward as bow and stern settled to the riverbed. No wave, no overload, no enemy. Reports flood in from the fleet. Cracks snake from hatch corners those sharp, square edges, concentrating stress in welded plates. In sub-zero seas, the steel loses ductility, turning brittle. What flexes at room temperature shatters like glass. At sea, the failures turn deadly. SS John P. Gaines splits completely in a gale. Bow and stern drifting apart, 10 men lost to the cold before rescue. Captains now dread winter passages more than submarines. Every groan of the hull brings silence on the bridge. Engineers scramble. Riveted crack arresters strap across decks. Hatches get rounded corners. Steel specs tighten. Overloads banned. Production never slows. By mid-1943, 3 Liberties launch daily. Over 2,700 in total. Sinkings can't match the output. In May, the tide turns, the Battle of the Atlantic slips from Germany's grasp. Arctic convoy PQ-17. Scattered by false alarms of the tear pits, Liberty sail alone into slaughter. WWII-8s scream down. Torpedoes streak in. Men abandon into oil-slicked, freezing water hypothermia, claiming most before drowning. In the Barents Sea, ice builds tons atop superstructures, threatening capsize. Crews chip endlessly, fingers raw. Below, engines pound without pause. Radio orders. Maintain course. Zigzag depth charges close aboard. When hulls fail, the shock is immediate. A captain logs a gunshot crack, then rushing water. Survivors watch irreplaceable cargo slide under supplies meant for Stalingrad for the pushback in Africa. Merchant marine losses mount higher than any uniformed service. Fear settles in. Not just the enemy, but the ship itself. By late 1943, U-boat commanders face unsustainable losses. Dönitz pulls them back. The Allies count the math. Volume has won. Germany never grasped America's industrial depth. Hitler scorned mass production as crude. Too late, the flood arrives. Supplies pour in for Normandy, for Soviet drives westward. The war's momentum shifts forever. If this loss mattered to you, let it be remembered. Yet, the human price lingered. Merchant mariners died at rates surpassing most fighting services. Their runs quiet, but essential. By 1944, the gamble appeared to have paid off. Allied merchant tonnage exceeded pre-war levels. Massive offensives became possible. North Africa secured, Sicily taken, the road to Normandy open. Arctic deliveries 4 million tons fed Soviet armies that shattered the Wehrmacht at Kursk. The Battle of the Atlantic ended in clear Allied victory by spring 1943. Convoys reached port nearly intact. Germany shifted precious resources just to stem the shipping tide, weakening every other theater. The enemy had misread American resolve. Kaiser's welded wonders, flaws and all, proved quantity could triumph when refined on the fly. If preserving stories like this matters, consider staying with the channel. This history only survives if it's told carefully and passed on intact. Ripple effects lasted decades. Surplus liberties rebuilt global trade. Lessons in fracture mechanics birthed safer steels, rounded stress points advances in every modern hull. Victory ships followed, faster, stronger airs. For a moment, it seemed the crisis had passed, but the deepest lesson was still hidden in the calm after the storm. The quiet irony of the Liberty ships comes into focus. A program driven by desperate haste almost destroyed itself through that same rush. The cracks didn't start in pour welds, as early blame fell on inexperienced workers. The steel standard, proven in riveted ships, was the culprit. In cold water, it crossed a hidden threshold, losing toughness. Ductile at warmer temperatures, it turned brittle below 40 degrees, allowing cracks to race unchecked through seamless welded plates. Riveting had unknowingly saved older designs. Rivet hole halted propagation. Welding created continuous strength, perfect for speed. fatal in winter. No exhaustive cold testing had been done. Sharp hatches, heavy loads amplified the risk. Nearly 1,500 serious fractures. 3 ships split entirely at sea. This wasn't ignorance. It was a decision made under a stopwatch, trading thorough caution for survival time. Yet adaptation prevailed. Fixes applied at sea, production unbroken. Those rushed, imperfect freighters showed that wartime innovation often means fixing flaws while the fight rages on. In the end, they embodied the war's unforgiving truth. Victory sometimes demands building faster than perfection allows. If someone in your family served at sea or sailed these routes, you're welcome to share where they came from. As the surviving Liberty ships limped into peacetime ports, patched and scarred beneath new paint, the oceans finally grew quiet. America's industrial wager had held the backbone unbowed. The Allies fed, the Axis denied the time it needed. The flaw wasn't in the steel alone. It was in the belief that total war leaves room for anything but calculated risk. Next time, the forgotten slaughter and logistical hell of Guadalcanal, the Pacific. Turning point few Americans truly understand.